Okay, here's my first story. So I want to tell you a story about a recurring dream that I had for the first 25 years of my life. So let me tell you this story. So the first 25 years of my life, I had the same dream over and over and over again. And so it would be at least once a month for 25 years. I am not kidding. And sometimes even more often than that. Have any of you ever had recurring dreams? Have you had that experience? So if you have, you will understand that when you have the same dream over and over and over again, especially if you don't understand it, and I'll tell you the dream in a moment, so you'll see it was a very mysterious dream. It can be very unsettling because it feels like it means something when you have the same dream over and over and over again. Yet when I had this experience for so many years, it took me a very long time. I didn't understand what it was until I was in my mid-20s, and I'll explain the whole story to you in a minute. But here's the dream, and I started having this from the time I was really, really, really little, before I could even speak. And I have this very interesting situation in my life because we moved all the time when I was growing up. So if I have very early memories, if I have in the memory, I can see anything from my surroundings. Like if I can tell what house we were in, then I'm able to pinpoint, okay, this was this house in this town. And so that means it was this year and I must have been this age. And so that helps me to categorize and organize my early memories. And so because of that, I remember that I started having this dream when I was really, really, really young. Here's the dream. So this dream had no visuals. It had no visuals. It was as if I were blind in the dream. So the whole thing was completely black. So no visuals whatsoever. So because of that, it's a little bit difficult to describe. But here's the way that I usually describe it. So in the entire dream was just a series of these sensations of roughness and smoothness. So during the rough times, it was kind of like if you're blind in an earthquake, okay? Because it was just this sensation of roughness. Does that make sense? And then it would last for maybe a minute or a few seconds, and then there would be this time of smoothness, of calmness, of peace, and then it would just keep rotating over rough and smooth, over and over and over again through the entire dream. And I couldn't see anything, but I could hear muffled voices. And so it was a very disturbing dream. And throughout the entire dream, I would have this sense of impending doom, as if I felt as if I was in a lot of danger, as if I was going to maybe be killed. I don't know. And so that is the entire dream. It was a very weird dream. And I would always know that I was getting ready to have the dream because as I was drifting off to sleep, if I was getting ready to have that dream, I would have this weird sensation, almost like being drugged. And this is back when I was a little kid. There were absolutely no drugs involved. But I would have this really weird feeling of like the different parts of my body, like my hand, all of a sudden would feel huge and numb, and then that would go away, and then it would go down my arm, or my shoulder would feel numb and big, and then it would go down to my feet and my legs, and that feeling would go up and down my body until I drifted off to sleep, and then I would have that weird dream. This went on for years, 25 years, and it was the weirdest thing. I had no idea what it was about. I prayed about it. I asked my parents when I was old enough to talk about it. I asked them, did something traumatic happen to me when I was a little kid? And they're like, no, nothing, And so through the years, I told a lot of people about this dream because I was just so hungry for information. What is this about? And most of the time people are like, I have no idea. That's weird, Blue. And I had no idea what this dream could possibly be until I was in college working on one of my graduate degrees. And now the entire time I was working on my graduate degrees in college, so this was like almost a decade, I was a graduate assistant. So I also taught college, like college writing and college composition courses. That's what it's called. And so that's how I paid for all of my college education, was by also being a graduate assistant. And so at this particular college where I was going, the graduate assistants all had a shared office space. And so we were with graduate assistants from all of the different kinds of, classes, all of the different majors. And so I was working on an English degree. And there was another woman in my office who was working on a psychology degree. And now I don't remember how it came up, but I told her my story of my dream that I was still having, even at that time in my mid-20s. And so I tell her this dream, and I'm getting ready for her to say, oh, I don't know, it's weird. Well, here's what she says. She says, oh, yeah, that is a known phenomenon. It's not very common. It's rare, but you are remembering when you were born. What? You are remembering when you were born. She said, this is a common phenomena, that it is a known thing, that every psychology major is going to know about this. Well, wow. Okay. She told me that, and it completely made sense. So think about this. So when I was experiencing that rough, smooth. So I'm still in this dream. In my memory, I'm still in utero, right? I haven't been born yet. And I am experiencing contractions, my mother's contractions, as I am getting ready to be born. Okay. And I think everybody knows that when the baby is still in the uterus, the baby can hear the mother's voice and hear the voices and things that are happening outside the mother's body. So I can hear those muffled voices. I was hearing my mother's voice, the doctor's voice, the nurses. So all of that, and that drugged feeling, that weird feeling. My mother had an epidural. So the baby, before you're born, you share the bloodstream with your mother. So if your mother is given some sort of drugs, painkillers, then the baby will be affected by that. So it all made sense. And here's the weirdest part of it. So as soon as she told me that, and then finally, after all these years, I understood what was going on. I never had that dream again. So interesting. And so since then, I have met two other people who have had the same experience, where they have had these dreams, and they had the same, where they had no idea what it was. And finally, I think one of them, I was able to tell them what it was. The other had already encountered someone who let them know what was going on. So interesting. And it was only about a year ago that God gave me a word and told me why I had this dream. And here's what he said. So if you know my story, those of you who follow me, you know that I grew up in an abusive home with a mother who was spiritually and emotionally abusive. She was a narcissist. So you know that story. I've told it and talk about it a lot on my live streams channel. And God has brought me through so much healing. So, but the abuse was also, there was a huge demonic aspect to the abuse, because there are some generational curses that come down through her family line. So my mother's family comes from Cuba. And so if you know anything about Cuban culture, there is a demonic version of Catholicism that is kind of like a combination of voodoo and Catholicism. Okay. That is called Santeria. And that is prevalent in Cuba. And so I believe that, and God has revealed a lot of this stuff to me over the years, but I believe that there's this family, this generational curse that comes down through my bloodline, that comes from that Santeria, and that my ancestors back in Cuba had been involved in that and made contracts with demons, and so created this generational curse. And so my great grandmother grew up in Cuba, and then she married an American, and they immigrated to the United States. And so my mother, when she was a little girl, she lived, the crazy old great grandmother lived with my mother and her parents when my mother was a little girl. And it has been the family story all these years that Mama is what everybody called her, that she was demon possessed, because she was just an evil, evil woman. And so that woman died, Mama, she died in the house where my mother was living when she was a little girl. And I believe that at that time, these demons that had come down through this generational curse and our bloodline curse attached themselves to my mother when she was a little bitty girl. And so anyway, this is stuff that I've learned throughout the years, that God has revealed some of the stuff to me, and then other stuff just is very obvious. So long story short, too late, is that about a year ago, God brought this back to my mind, this dream that I had all those years of being born, because I believe that, and if you know my story, I went through severe demonic oppression because one of my mother's demons attached itself to me before I was even born. And so I had all these experiences of having this severe demonic oppression where, I had a demon speaking, yelling at me and saying all these terrible things to me as I was a little kid. I went through depression, terrible depression, even suicidal depression when I was 30 years old, was even so suicidally depressed that I tried to take my own life by taking sleeping pills, and had an out-of-body death experience. And God sent angels to help me call for help, 911, before I died, so that they were able to bring me back to life in the hospital. So that's part of my story. But that all stems from that demonic oppression that attached itself to me before I was even born. All right. So about a year ago, God reminded me of all of this, and he said, I wanted to make sure that you understood the reason why you remember that you were born, this very rare thing that doesn't happen to very many people, is because I wanted to make sure you understood that you have been called from the womb by me, that I was there. Yeah, there were demons there. There were demons in that same body where you were being formed, but I was there too, is what God told me. And I have always had my hand on you. I have always protected you and walked through all of this with you. And there were reasons why I let you experience what you experienced, so that now that I can use that experience to minister to others who are going through similar things. But always God said I was there, and I was protecting you, and I had my hand on you always. So I thought that was really interesting. And I wanted to show you a couple of scriptures that are related to that, because this is true of everyone. This is true of you. Okay, that God has called all of us. God knows all of us from even before we are knit together in the womb. How can I say that? Let me show you these scriptures. Okay, so this is from Jeremiah 1:5. And God says this, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed. So before you were even a fetus, God knew you. From the beginning of time, God knew you, and he has a plan for your life, and he has a purpose that he created you for. It's not just true of me, it's true of every single one of us. And before you were born, I consecrated you. Listen to what David says here in Psalm 139. For you, he's saying this to God, for you, God, you created my innermost parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you because I am awesomely and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, God, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret and skillfully formed in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my formless substance. So he says the same thing. Even before I was formed, God, you knew me. You knew me. And in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. How precious also are your thoughts for me, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Do you understand what David's saying here? Not only, God, did you know me before you formed me in my mother's womb and knit me together, you had a plan for me. You had a purpose for me, and you love me. How precious are your thoughts for me. I can't even count how many times you have thought of me, God, more times than grains of sand. Oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. God loves us so much. One more quick verse. Isaiah 49. The Lord called me from the womb, from the body of my mother. He named me. So I just wanted to share this with you today because it is so encouraging. Not only just that crazy dream sequence that I had the first 25 years of my life, but then the message that God gave me about what it means, because this is true about you and every single one of us. God loves us so much. And so maybe you're watching this and you think you've made a lot of mistakes in your life, and you think, well, maybe God had a plan for me originally, but I've screwed it all up. That is not true, because before you were born, before you were even formed, God knew everything that was going to happen to you. He knew everything, every choice that you were going to make. And he loved you anyway. And he had a plan for your life anyway. So no matter where you are, what you've done in your life, God has a plan for you right now. So that is so encouraging. I hope you were encouraged by that story.